Hey kids, this is Ivan. How you doing? You know, I seem to be on this tear lately of when I make a video, I reference 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 other videos. So these mammoth video responses, and so today is no different. Uh, I'll link what I'm going to talk about here in a minute. And you know, it's funny. A lot of what we've been talking about lately, and when I mean me, I mean members of the brigade going back and forth in video responses, you know, on Facebook, whatever. We've been talking about a bunch of different subjects, or you know, kind of circling around a bunch of ideas. And one of these is the vocabulary for talking about gaming. You know, because we're talking about like what is the definition of a word like story or agency or genre. Because often we can find ourselves talking at cross purposes when both people involved in the conversation think they're both talking about the same thing, but you realize, especially if you're on the outside, and kind of horror and fascination, that there's two different conversations going on, and you know, neither person really is listening to the other one, or you know, their definition is different. Anyhow, today I talk about something that I haven't talked about in a long time, you know, specifically, and that is Dungeons and Dragons. And before you turn it off, what I'm going to talk about really is, you know, I watched some videos. Bankbar Como, I hopefully I'm getting his name right, made a response video to Robert the narrator's video about our D&D grognards, the grognardiest of them all. That's a great title. And Bankbar mentioned my video, a couple other people's videos, made some comments about that, which got me thinking. And also Red Dice Diaries did a great video about his RPG Bugbears series about people that use D&D for everything, or to try to play, you know, use D&D rules to play everything. Great video, you should check that out. Eric from Bloat Games actually made a great response video to that one too. So all this kind of got me thinking about it. And you know what I realized, and you know, this kind of brought it home a lot as I'm watching, you know, some people talk about stuff, and a lot of comments too. That people like me, and I mean people with a history with Dungeons and Dragons, assume that other people know what we're talking about when we say Dungeons and Dragons, because there's a few different versions, and I'm not talking about the 5 editions. I'm talking, you know, and so I'll go into it because they're vastly different. So this is kind of like, you know, and you may not agree, especially if you're another person like me, you may not agree exactly of how I boil this all down, but whatever, you make a comment. So what are we talking about when we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons? Well, I made some props, and you probably won't be able to read them, but they help me out. First of all, we're talking about old school TSR D&D. That's our first category. And so that is, I'm going to lump that into classic D&D. That would be original Dungeons and Dragons and all the basics, including like BX, my favorite, very rules light system. And then advanced D&D, which would be first and second edition. Now these are all kind of, you know, what people might call old school. Definitely all TSR, because that was a company. A lot of the retro clones are pretty much based on that in one way, shape, or form. So that's one version of D&D. Then you've got D20 Pathfinder version 3.0 D&D and 3.5. And Pathfinder, you know, is, you know, arguably, like people, you know, 99% of the people who play Pathfinder will, you know, say, well, they're playing D&D. What made me really kind of laugh a little bit is when Bankbar, you know, had his video and he was talking about somebody that, you know, he asked his group would they want to play Pathfinder, saying, no, we're going to play D&D. I mean, I'm just shaking my head like, you asked them to play D&D, so they said, no, we'd rather play D&D. You know, in fact, I think Robert the narrator's video, when he was talking about his group wanting to play Dungeons and Dragons, I think they were playing Pathfinder. You know, so they're synonymous. But this is the whole D20 game, you know, system. Very popular. Then you have this weird duck called 4th edition, which either you hated or you loved, and it made people in both camps, the old school camp and the D20 Pathfinder camp, you know, nuts. And some people really loved it. And then Wizards of the Coast realized they'd kind of alienated some people, so they wanted everybody to sing Kumbaya. So we've got, you know, rainbows and unicorns and hearts, and this is 5th edition, which is their attempt to really synthesize, you know, these 3 other forms of D&D, or 4 other forms of D&D, I suppose. Yeah, 4, 3, yeah, whatever it is, yeah, 3, into one. I wasn't counting, but you know what I mean. And I think they actually did a pretty good job. Like, I don't own the product, but you know, a lot of people seem happy. I looked it over, whatever. Anyhow, so they're very different things we're talking about when we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons. And so at one point, you know, Bankbar was mentioning in his video, he wouldn't understand why, you know, and he's referencing mine, why somebody would want to bolt on another mechanic onto D&D rather than use a different system. And it depends on the D&D we're talking about. I'm not talking about D20 D&D or 4th edition or 5th edition. And all those are complete systems. You know, whether you like them or not, they're complete systems. The older versions, the TSR D&D, you know, both the advanced D&D and the classic D&D, these are incomplete systems. These are cobbled together. And some of them are big, giant, unwieldy monsters. Like, I grew up with first edition, love it, but I don't think I'd want to play it again. They're gigantic. Rule Cyclopedia in the classic D&D area, section or camp, whatever you want to call it. Division is just giant, unwieldy monster. I like things like OD&D and BX because they're really, small, rules light. Anyhow, but I'm digressing. A system, something I'd want to bolt on, I'd feel comfortable bolting on a mechanic to, is something like these old classic D&D, because it's not a complete system. So let me, make a distinction. This is this distinction I use in my own mind. You've got these 3 other games that are all legally Dungeons and Dragons. Pathfinder isn't, but you know what I mean. You got D20, you've got 5th edition, you've got 4th edition. Then you've got these games that, for me, what these old versions of Dungeons and Dragons are, and I'm not defending them. I'm just kind of giving you like how a lot of us, people that kind of know all the D&D lingo or divisions think, or kind of understand. To me, that really early version, the original Dungeons and Dragons, the basics, the early basics, like Moldvay, BX, Holmes. The game is an idea. It's not a system. It's an idea. And the idea is really kind of summed up the best in that question that, I'm going to misquote it a bit, but that Dave Arneson, the other co-creator of D&D, asked, it might be an apocryphal that he asked Gary Gygax, but all these guys are playing war games, and, one day Dave asks, what if you just control the actions of one person? What would that look like? And how would you do it? And that's the idea. So to me, when I think about, what is classic D&D, the kind that I like, those really simple rules light ones that I feel comfortable bolting on a mechanic to, it's an idea. What would it look like if you control the actions of one person? How would it work? So, because it's not a cohesive system, I feel okay just, bolting on a mechanic, because the resolution mechanics kind of come afterwards, It's arguable, but to me, the resolution mechanics are secondary to that idea. Not saying all games are D&D. That was my other kind of tongue-in-cheek video, but so that's so we're talking about like at least 4 different things when we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons. And it's funny now that as far as the RPG Bugbears videos, people that use D&D for everything, I get it. John made a great video, and Eric made a great reply. I'm not going to go into all that, but he mentioned the idea that a lot of systems are setting neutral. If you yank the setting and other stuff out of them, so you can arguably say something like the D6 system, West End Games, setting neutral, Fate, Fate. You hear me, John? Fate setting neutral, and so are some of these like D20. D20, my God, people, since the open game license, there's a lot of different games using the D20 system, and I got news for you. Those are D&D, at least they're Pathfinder D20 D&D. Don't tell anybody. But I get what he's saying. But here's just kind of turning this on its head, just for fun. Ask John this and anybody else, and I'm not defending this. I'm just kind of having some fun and generating some discussion. Here's another great RPG Bugbears video idea. People that use a different system for every genre they play. How about that one? Because sometimes in my mind, and not defending using D&D for everything, I'm really not. Sometimes it's a little funny and perplexing to me that people have to use a different system when they play a different genre simply because they have to play a different system. So that'd be another great RPG Bugbear video. So what do you think? What's your opinion on that? And did I get the D&D divisions wrong? Any other D&D experts out there? I'm certainly not an expert. Have a good one.